In today's world, older adults face major transitions like downsizing, relocating, or modifying their homes to age in place, all while embracing life after these changes. As a senior home advisor and seasoned realtor, Robin McCoy guides these decisions with care and thoughtful planning, helping create a vibrant future. Welcome to Relax, I Got This, Embracing Life After 60 with me, your host, Robin McCoy. Okay, Annalee, thank you so much for taking some time today. We've got a lot to unpack.
You're welcome, and thank you for having me today, Robin.
So you have, as we were chatting a minute ago, I saw you presented at a conference in Wichita a couple of years ago where I was in attendance, and just the vast things that you face and you help families face is just this giant thing that nobody wants to talk about. And so I thought we would just talk about it because you've created this company, but it came out of a history of seeing all the ugly and the hard things. So tell me a little bit about where all this comes from, and then we'll jump into why it's so important.
Yeah, thank you. So my background is, well, first of all, I'm 53 years old. My entire life has been around elderly people. In the 70s, there wasn't home care, there wasn't assisted living, there wasn't all of that there is now. And so my grandparents moved in to our house when we were growing up. So all I know is elderly and what happens as you age, and arthritis and pain, and as you age, those are the things that tend to happen, right? And then family caregiving and the time that takes and the energy that can take. And so I knew when I was in third grade that I was going to be working with seniors in some capacity, but it was social work, right? I just didn't know what it was called because I was 9.
And so, I didn't have the words quite yet.
I didn't know what that was called back then, but it's called social work. And so I just have stayed in the senior care industry. I started as a social worker, actually activity assistant, actually a candy striper back when we had candy stripers. So literally, I'm not kidding.
You really have.
I am an expert in aging and seniors because that is all I know. And so I was a candy striper. Then I was an activity assistant when I was in college. And then I went into, social work and was a social worker and marketing director in CCRCs when those first came out in the early 90s, continuing care retirement communities, the ones that have independent living all the way down to assisted to memory care and to skilled nursing. And so my job back then was I managed the entire campus. So I was a social worker and marketing director for the entire campus for all of the levels of care. Because nowadays it's not like that. Probably because they learned their lesson that you can't expect one person to do all of that. It's a lot.
All of those things, yeah.
But that's also what made me an expert in literally everything, all things senior. Because
you were there for every level of it, right? And watching your residents literally do that.
Yes, and so I for 26 years, I first started out as a social worker, admissions director. Then I moved up, big mistake, but moved up into being an executive director. I'm not one to sit at my desk doing spreadsheets. That's just not me. So it wasn't the greatest fit, but I did that for 3 years. But part of my job was always the same. Part of the same role was to do the tours of the care community when the families would come in. And so what would happen, and it still happens today and it will happen every day until the end of time, is there's a medical crisis. Example, mom has a stroke. She's the caregiver to dad with dementia. Back then in the 90s, families lived more centralized to each other so they could help out a little bit more, and they were a tiny little bit more in tune to what's going on because they would get together. They would still have Sunday lunch together, all that kind of stuff. Right. That's how families used to be. And so, because they live close by. But still the same problem remained was mom had a stroke. She was the caregiver to dad with dementia. The kids are they never lived with dad before, during dementia. So they're like, oh my gosh, we've only had dad 2 days. And we don't know how mom did this. We are exhausted. So, but here's the plight. They have mom in the hospital who needs advocacy because she's, had a major stroke. Dad's got dementia. The kids had no idea what questions to ask, what to look for, because the hospital discharge planner, and this is how it goes every single time. So all your listeners should not be surprised. So I'm just telling you, this is how it works every single time. When your loved one goes into the hospital, they're not there to camp out. They're there to get, like, they're working on a discharge plan as soon as you cross the threshold, right? And so the hospital discharge planners or caseworkers would say, well, here's a list of facilities, go find one by noon tomorrow because we're discharging your mom. And so the kids would literally come to the care community. Back then it was all paper, right? This is the 90s and the 2000s. And so they would come with this whole stack of brochures that the hospital discharge planner gave them. And they're like bewildered because unless you hang out in senior care communities, they are very daunting. They can be very intimidating because you hear people calling out for help. You smell things, you see things that you're not accustomed to. And it's just on no one's bucket list to have to make these types of decisions. Right. And so the kids had no idea what questions to ask, what to look for during the tour. They're like, I don't know, Dad's got dementia. We can't take care of him. Mom's going to be, she needs a long-term plan here because she's got a debilitating stroke. And so the kids didn't understand Medicare and Medicaid. They thought they were the same program, or they thought that Medicare would pay for everything for all of care of the parents' care needs. And I'm like, wow, so, and they also didn't understand dementia. They're like, I don't know why Dad is acting like this. He used to be a bank president and now he can't find his shoes, or he wanders out of the house, or he can't set up his own medicine. And so there's all this, unfamiliarity or uneducation, ignorance, not educated about it, ignorance. They don't know what they don't know about dementia, about senior care, about how to pay for care. So when you can imagine that when I'm like, oh, well, Medicare is only going to pay a X amount, and then co-insurance, and then the rest of it is up to your mom and dad, and that's provided Medicare will still pay. And so they just didn't know how to manage any of this. And they didn't understand dementia. They didn't understand Medicare, Medicaid. They didn't understand assisted living and nursing home, that they're two totally different levels of care because they would use them interchangeably as if they're synonyms. And then when I would ask them, what do your parents have in order? Do they have a living will? I don't know. What's that? Do they have a power of attorney? Do they have long-term care insurance? Is your dad a veteran? The answers were always the same. They're like, I don't know, Annalee. We've never talked about any of this stuff. And then there was teeny tiny percent, 2% of families who would say, Annalee, we tried to get this information from mom and dad because this is mom's third hospital stay, or, dad got diagnosed with dementia 6 years ago, and we started to try to have these conversations with mom and dad, but they gave us so much pushback that we quit trying because then it was causing a wedge in the relationship. Well, here we are yet again in another medical crisis. So after 26 years of the same data points, every single family in the same boat, I was like, it sure seems like
this is a trend. I think this is.
I know, real entrepreneurial. I think I have a business model here. And so I created so I left corporate America in 2011, and I will be 1,000% transparent. I was going to get fired because by then senior care was already starting to change from more of a, we care about you model, thanks for joining, thanks for being our customer, to more of how much money can we make off of you, right? And so my directives from the facilities was, you're spending too much time with these families, you need to get them in, get them out. If they're not ready to sign, move in, then get them out. And I was like, wow, you are so short-sighted because the reason that we have waiting lists on all of these different levels of care that I'm in charge of is because I do spend the time. I was spending 2 and 3 hours at a time with each of these tour families because they had so many questions. They're so scared. They're overwhelmed. They're blindsided by, they got kind of a 1-2 punch, mom's medical issues, and then the realization that dad is really not doing well at all. And what do we do? How did we miss all these red flags? That whole thing. Yeah. And so in 2011, I was like, fine, corporate healthcare, suit yourself, but that doesn't.
You do you, boo. I'm gonna go do me.
That doesn't work for Annalee. And so I left, and I had 6 months of savings. Thank God. So I was like, well, it's sink or swim. You got to figure out this business ownership thing. And so but thank God, as soon as I basically hung my shingle, my phone was ringing off the hook because people know, like, I'm well known, right? And
Right,
you know,
right.
this is all I've ever known. So when people hear of Annalee, they're like, oh, senior care, and then oh, expert, oh, now consultant. And so I started Care Right in 2011 because I was going to leave. I left corporate healthcare on my own terms. And so I started a consultancy that solved for all those problems that I just rattled off.
Right.
Families not having family meetings, families not understanding what their parents have in order, not understanding dementia, not understanding the differences in care, not understanding how care, you know, how expensive care is and how to pay for that. And so I went virtual in 2011 right away. We only had Skype back then because that's the only way I could reach these families, because by then the market had changed. Families don't live near each other. So you got 3 kids in 3 different time zones, mom and dad in a different time zone. We've got more blended families now than we ever have. And a lot of times those adult kids haven't even really met their, you know,
Yeah, they don't have the
co-siblings.
relationship with
They don't have a
the
relationship,
parent's
so
new spouse, right?
exactly. And so, you know, so it becomes a mess. It becomes a mess. And so in 2011, I started Care Right Incorporated, went virtual, like I said, right away so that I could facilitate their family meet. That's the only way I could reach them, was to go by Skype, and because that's what we had. And so I facilitate their family meetings. What is working well? What's working less well? You can imagine, Robin, no one calls me because things are going well.
Right. No.
It's
Nope,
never
you're like
like,
a divorce attorney. We call you because something's fallen apart.
yeah, no one ever calls because they're like, hey, we heard you on the podcast. You sound super cool. Just thought I'd, you know, let you know my parents are doing okay and I'm ready to put a plan in place. No, it's never that.
Never that. Never
It is.
that.
It is never that. In fact, it's always the opposite. When you know, it's always the opposite. You know, things are not going well. Families overwhelmed. They're burned out. You know, one of the caregiver kids might have been trying to like get their siblings' attention for months or years, saying, "Look, I'm local. I know what's going on with dad. You guys are not seeing it because when you call for that 8 minutes once a month, he sounds fine, but I'm here to tell you he is not." And so, you know, so there's always this kind of relationship strain with the families. 92% of my clients are onboarded in crisis mode. Caregiver burnout, caregiver overwhelm, family not getting along, something major medically just happened with one of the parents or both of them. Both of them, like, mom's trying to help dad in the shower and they both slipped and now they both have broken hips, and now what do we do, right? And so those are crisis scenarios. And so, you know, unfortunately, those 92% of those families that are now being onboarded in crisis, 31% of those, I met with them on Zoom, because I switched to Zoom like, you know, ever ago, when things were actually going well-ish, when mom and dad could participate in their aging plan. They could, you know, we could have conversation together on Zoom. Ethel, what's working well? What keeps you up at night? What do you worry about? What are the challenges that you have during your day? Marvin, what are your goals? How are things going for you at home? Is the furniture height okay? Is your bathroom safe? All of those, you know, what are your goals as you age? But when families choose to wait, or they get blindsided quickly by a medical crisis, then they're like, what do we do? But the problem is, I can promise you, the family meetings of a family who's proactive, where they're like, you know what, we're seeing the writing on the wall. Mama's starting to lose weight. Dad's got some memory issues. You know, we're having to pop in and check in on them more often. Those, you know, that's to be expected. We don't get healthier. We don't get more able-bodied. We don't get more independent, and we certainly don't get more cognizant as we age. So nobody should be surprised when mom and dad start falling or have arthritis or might have some memory issues or going to need care, because we don't get healthier as we age. I can't bring that home
Just
enough.
natural. This is just the natural progression, right? It's nobody's fault.
That's right.
This
It's
is just
just-
what happens. Things get old and wear out, just like an old car, we are an old machine.
That's right. I am 53. I don't pop out of bed in the morning like I did when I was 43. I roll out of bed and my body makes cracks and creaks. I'm like, what the heck? I sound like a bowl of Rice Krispies, and it's like, this is just what you can expect as we're all gonna, God willing, we're all gonna get there.
It's the alternative. I mean,
exactly. Every time you're on this side of the dirt, you're in a good place. and so, but here's the challenge. When families, those 31% that did reach out or get referred to me when things were going well, that was their reason why they weren't ready to put a plan in place, because things are going okay. And I'm like, that is the perfect time to put a plan in place because everyone can have some input. Your parents will get better care when we plan it out versus them ending up with whatever home care or whatever facility has an open bed. Right. That is the last thing you want for a parent, right? Yeah. But that's what usually people tend to do. And so, and I can promise you the family meetings of a family who's proactive where they're like, you know what, things aren't going well. We can kind of see what's going on here. There's laughter, there's joy, there's kidding back and forth. But when families are in crisis mode, there's none of that. It is tears, anger, scared, fear, overwhelm. And so just the dynamic and the tone of the family meetings are entirely different. So I had a very grandiose goal. I really thought when I left corporate America and started my own consultancy that I would be able to reach families proactively. Like, let's plan ahead. Let's save time, money, stress, overwhelm. Let's prevent caregiver burnout by putting an aging plan in place. But the reality is the market is what it is. People don't tend to do anything until they're forced into it. And then it's very overwhelming because then that's when you find out, oh, mom and dad don't have long-term care insurance. Or, oh, mom and dad didn't get their legal documents in order. There is no power of attorney in place. And now they're having to shell out 20 grand in guardianship and conservatorship fees because mom and dad didn't plan ahead. Or the kids are now having to plan a funeral because parents didn't have anything in order, or mom had a stroke. She's the one that's been taking care of all the finances because dad has dementia. There's been no conversation about who's the financial advisor, who's the attorney, what's the accounts, the passwords, which bills come out of which account. Kids, here's what you need to know. There's none of that. And so you can imagine when everything goes sideways, the kids have to deal with, or the healthy spouse has to deal with, okay, what do we do now? And then that's when there's a lot of relationship strain because everybody's scared and overwhelmed.
We Are One Heart is a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to bridging the gap between the needs and resources of low-income seniors and veterans. Rooted in compassion and love, our mission is to provide housing, living assistance, and access to critical resources that ensure dignity and support for the elderly in underserved communities. At the heart of We Are One Heart's work is the belief that every individual shares a common humanity, a heart connected through love and care. We are committed to creating a future that honors those who have shaped the past by offering programs and services that enhance their quality of life. For more information or to donate, visit wa1h.org. That's WA1H.org.
85% of my week is spent doing family mediation with families all across the country because by the time they come to me, they are not getting along, and they're scared, and sometimes they never got along.
Right.
I'm trying to.
Yeah, I mean, not all families are the Cleavers, right?
That's right.
Probably aging myself there. But
even the closest knit families will likely have relationship strain because they're scared, they're overwhelmed. Maybe they actually do have good relationships and they've worked together, in the past on different things, as a family. But when that stroke or dad wanders out of the house and he's missing for 3 days and you live in the Iowa cornfields. I can say that because I'm an Iowa farm kid.
Yeah.
But when you're,
how scary is that though?
When your loved one wanders out because the family didn't understand dementia, or they didn't understand wandering, or they didn't understand sundowning and what that means, that's why the aging planning process that we take families through, we're educating them about all of those things. So it's very robust, but it's everything that families need to know so they can actually make informed decisions about current care needs and future care needs and future care costs.
Well, and that's why I want to have these conversations, right? Because even, and again, my situation, I refer to the situation with my mom that happened in the fall of 2023. She just, she lost her ability to walk. So 87 years old, she had some medical issues, and now she is bedridden. I knew people in the industry. I knew people I could call, and I still sat in conference rooms and in my car in tears and angry. I had a supportive sister who was helping with as much as she could, and we didn't know what the hell we were doing, and I knew people, and I was right here. So to think about having, you know, being scattered across the United States, dealing with things like dementia and stroke. My mother's cognitive ability, she was just fine arguing with me. She, you know, we got the, you know, that was fine. But that's why I want to have these conversations, because people need to have this, more of that 30% being the 90%,
Being
right?
the proactive,
90% of your business.
I would love to flip those stats and have 8% be crisis families and 92% be like, hey, Annalee, mom fell, and that just prompted us to realize that, you know, we don't have anything in order. We don't, you know, the hospital's telling us we have to make these decisions. We don't know. I mean, that's still crisis, but like that, leverage that and say, look, mom, we'll make it through, you know, we'll make it through this, but like this sheds some light on how ill prepared we really are and how naive we are. And how are you going to, you know, that's why I wrote my book, The Invisible Patient, the emotional, financial, and physical toll on family caregivers, because it is always the adult son and daughter who call me. I would love it if moms and dads, the Ethels and the Marvins, would take a more proactive approach about their aging years. But I've yet to find the magic words to get through that layer of denial. You know, it's hard for families to want to put a plan in place, because that means you have to talk about things that are uncomfortable. That's why I lead those family meetings and direct the conversation, so that, because you can't expect people who don't know what they're doing to make a smart, affordable, or safe plan. It's always the opposite. Because because I've yet to work with a family who understands how to navigate senior care. Even people who work in hospitals or work in the healthcare field, they're experts, like a physical therapist or a physician, or a social worker. They're experts in that section of it.
It's like siloed. It's very siloed.
But you can't expect, because I'll have families that are like, well, my sister is a nurse. I'm like, okay, great. What kind of nurse? Oh, she works in the pediatric floor. And I'm like, okay, but that's great. But that's fantastic. But that's not. That's not going to
have nothing to do with what we're doing.
With like aging and dementia and Medicare and safe transfers and all that kind of stuff. So I haven't found the magic words that just
do you think
resonate with everybody,
as you and I, right? So the adult child age group, right? So the people in their 50s and 60s who have our aging parents in their 70s and 80s. It is my thought, because I intend to do better than my parents did, right? That those of us that are that sandwich generation, or that boomer, whatever you want to call us, the Gen Xers, the boomers, the adult children, whatever we are, that we will start making some of these plans, because we are going through it with our parents, and we don't want to leave that to our kids or other people to have to deal with, because hopefully we're learning something.
Right. Well, and that's a lot of times why the adult kids will, because I've been in business since 2011. It's 2025, almost 2026. So I've been in business long enough now that I've got the second generation. The kids that reached out to me in the first place, they're like, hey, we want you to do the same thing with our kids that you did with our mom and dad, because we don't want to leave our kids a shit show, and that's what they say. So I'm just quoting them.
That's what it
I'm
is.
just quoting them that they don't want to leave their kids with a shit show like what their parents kind of did with them, and that's why they hired me in the first place, to undo the shit show.
Right, to unravel it and keep it from happening again.
Correct. And so it's really, legacy intergenerational planning, because now that the kids, we'll get to the, costs of care and stuff, but now that the kids actually understand, senior care, the industry and the landscape of senior care, care communities can have long waiting lists. Or what if you live in a rural area and you need memory care, and your, dad needs memory care and mom needs, skilled nursing, but they don't have openings, or they don't have one campus that has all of those different care
they're
levels.
not under the same roof, so now mom and dad are
separated,
20 miles or more apart, right?
And I promise you, that is not what they want. That's usually not what they want. Yeah. I've only had one family, and I've worked with over 20,000 families, and I've been at this a long time, but I've only had one wife who said, honestly, Annalee, it does not matter to me if I'm near my husband or not. I was like, okay, so that's, a lot of what I deal with is psychosocial family dynamics,
Sure.
family relationships. And so you honor that, and you're like, okay, well then these are different care options. This is how much it's going to cost. Families don't realize that you have to have an opening first. Like, you have to be accepted. You have to financially, physically, behaviorally, and cognitively qualified to get into these different care communities. And that's why we talk about, okay, now that because we do a care matrix, and so we're outlining what are the levels of care, what are their waiting lists, what are the room sizes, how much does it cost, what is your net worth requirement, so that now we can have that conversation about what is going to be your aging in place at home care budget, so that you don't break the bank. And now you realize you can't stay at home, mom and dad, because you can't afford the $30,000 to $60,000 to $70,000 per month of 24/7 home care. Because when parents say they want to age in place at home, again, unless you are lucky and you just die in your sleep, but that happens to like that many people, yeah. Right? So most people plan for worst case scenario. When they say they want to die at home, they're going to most likely need care up until they die, right? And so it's hard for seniors and families to kind of fast forward to be like, well, Annalee, we're still golfing and playing pickleball and tennis and doing cruises and stuff. So it's hard for them, and driving. It's hard for them to fast forward in their mind about, that's the denial piece. Yeah. It's hard for them to fast forward into when they're bedridden, incontinent, need to be fed, need to be bathed, all of that. And that's the care that I'm talking about that, can be it's roughly 30 grand per month for one companion. And then if you're like my parents, my dad is 6'4", my mom was little, she was only like 4'11", but she had mild cognitive impairment. That's one of the reasons also that I went virtual in 2011 when I started my company. Not only did the market change where kids don't live near each other, but my mom had early onset dementia as well. And I knew that I wanted to be very actively involved in their aging years and their care needs and all of that kind of stuff. So I created a business that the market requires, because families require, they really do. If they want to have the best care outcomes and the best family relationship outcomes and the best financial outcomes, they really need to work with a professional who can get them into those types of positions. But I needed to create a company that met my family's needs as well. But it's, when families don't realize the how much it's going to cost, because they assume Medicare is going to pay for it, or Title 19 or Medicaid will pay for it, then you can't expect a family to make smart, informed, or safe decisions when they don't know what they don't know. And Google will only get you so far. ChatGPT will only get you so far. Neighbor Joe, what he did with his mom will only get you so far.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's the most shocking, because even the senior themselves, my mother will still say, well, isn't Medicare paying for this? Yeah. And I'm like, no, never in this lifetime ever will they, till the end of time, will they pay for your housing.
Correct.
It is a medical health care plan, just like insurance when you go to work for a company.
Yep.
It is an insurance plan and nothing else.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to finding care, even part-time are 4-hour minimums.
Right.
So they can't come in and make sure mom's got breakfast, make sure she's up out of bed and bathed and cared for in that hour, and then, come back 2 hours, or
Right.
you can't do it that way.
Right.
And then it's $35-$40 an hour, depending on where you are and,
Right.
Who
Yeah.
you're talking to. And then I have found what in my research was then I have to manage them.
Right.
Because if they don't show up, guess who has to go do something?
That's right.
And so I'm like, and again, like I said, I had resources. I'm on the phone and I'm calling people and we figured it all out. But people don't know, and they don't know, like you said, the monthly cost just is astronomical right now.
Well, when you look at, like I said, my mom and dad, my dad's 6'4", and my mom with mild cognitive impairment, when she fell, what obviously typically happens is that can progress when there's an injury, that can progress them into that next stage. Well, and it absolutely did when she broke her shoulder. It made her attention span like from here to like here. And she needed, from then on, she needed basically one-on-one supervision with her, because she'd get up and walk around, she'd forget her walker, she'd, trip over her catheter hose, there all sorts of stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so, and my dad being 6'4", so 2 weeks after my mom fell and was discharged to a skilled rehab unit for therapy, the night that we were admitting mom into rehab, and it's for physical therapy. She's not a drug addict. So the night that we were admitting mom into the rehab unit and kind of getting her, situated in there, I'm like, Dad, and it was right before Christmas. It was December 18th, and a few years ago. And I'm like, here, Dad, here's a list of stuff we need to go get at Walmart or Target, Christmas tree, all this kind of stuff to get her room decorated, because, she's going to be there through the holidays. And he's not responding. He's not like taking the list. And so I look over and he's unresponsive. He was having a stroke. And so I became instantly my typical client. Both parents now, my mom she has dementia. She's already been back and forth between the ER, the hospital, now into rehab. So she's very discombobulated, which is typical with a dementia patient. Even I would be that way too. I'm like, okay, now where am I? So here it is. And the hospitals are notorious for discharging at stupid, crazy hours. 2 a.m, 3 a.m. I mean, it's stupid what they do to these seniors. I mean, it's literally stupid. It's so awful. It's a disgrace, but that's a whole nother podcast. But anyway, like, I'm very mad at my healthcare industry because they treat these seniors and their families like crap.
Yeah.
And so, truly they do. And so, here I am trying to get mom situated. Dad's having a stroke. And then the nurse right then comes in and she's like, you two need to leave because I need to do your mom's skin assessment. I'm like, my dad, because literally it happened like seconds before she opened the door. The nurse opened the door and I'm like, my dad is unresponsive. And she's like, I can't help you with that. That's too bad. You're just going to have to transfer him into a wheelchair by myself. He's 6'4". So he's like flopping all over. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. And so she's like, yeah, you're going to have to call 911. Like, they would not help me.
And you were in the hospital or at the rehab?
I'm in the rehab unit.
Wow. Wow.
And she's like, yeah, you need to get out, and you need to get him out because we need to do your mom's skin assessment. Like, this is what
so she's like zeroed in on this skin assessment.
Yeah, I'm not like, oh my gosh, my dad
is my
like,
task, that's my job, I
yes,
need to do that.
That's why we also do care advocacy, because this is what senior care has become. That's why I'm saying, I'm not kidding when I say or my industry treats these people like crap. And so thankfully, long story short about that, but thankfully dad fully recovered. But if he wouldn't have, and I was trying to bring them both home, dad himself would have needed like 2 caregivers. These are not football linebackers.
Yeah.
You know,
he's 6'4".
He's tall.
That's a
He's
big
6'4",
guy.
6'4", 240 pounds. These are not football linebackers that they send out. And then with my mom's dementia, she needed someone make sure she didn't get out of the house, right? And
and experience with people with dementia and memory issues, right?
And that's a tall order.
That's a whole other human. than
yes.
somebody that's just making sure they're bathed and their medications are,
Exactly.
completely
Exactly.
different person.
So it would have been, $80,000 for me to keep mom and dad at home, or for mom and dad to pay to keep them at home. And so families, don't understand the actual
$80,000.
per month, per month.
Yes,
And
let's
that's,
clarify that.
and that's what, yeah, per month. And so, when families don't realize this, then they get blindsided and they're like, how am I supposed to help mom and dad age in place at home when they don't have that kind of money? Right. And so that's why we do the aging plan. We help them understand all of these aging, family caregiver burnout, the cost of care. So then when we do that care matrix and we're outlining the different home care companies or geriatric care managers or adult daycare programs, so that they can understand exactly how much care is going to cost. And then we also outline different care facilities so that they understand waiting lists. So if they're where they live, there's a 5-year waiting list. Well, how are you going to backfill that 5 years when your parents probably need care now if they don't have the 5 years of private pay funds to pay for home care while they wait to get into this, so this is the mess.
It's a
Find
mess.
themselves in, and that's why I help them, and that's why we have considerable volume. We have we have a lot of people that just reach out. They're like, because I have done a good job. I do a lot of podcasts. I wrote my book. I'm a national speaker, and we just do a really good job with our families. So every single family is a word of mouth referral from either from a current or past client or a financial planner or an estate attorney. So we don't advertise. It's all we just do good work, and we help families get their lives back on track so that they don't end up, because here's the problem. We help them get their life back on track because now they have an aging plan. They know how much money it's going to cost for care, so then we can reverse engineer and say, okay, well, it's unlikely that mom or dad can age in place at home because they don't have the money. Or, like, to your point, Robin, what are you going to do if that 12-hour caregiver doesn't show up for their shift, and you can't just, call in sick or miss work again?
Right.
And so what is that going to look like for you as a family? And we certainly don't want to have the last few years of your time with your parents to feel angry, bitter, resentful, obligated. And then, because a lot of families are like, oh, when is this going to end? Because they're so overwhelmed, because they didn't have a plan in place. They're just they're in survival mode, just trying to get through the day. Well, that's not a way to live. That's not safe, and it's not sustainable for anybody.
I knew Annalee had a lot to share, and we are going to cut this into 2 episodes so that you have time to listen and focus on everything she says. So stay tuned for part 2 with Annalee next week. And in the meantime, make sure you go to the show notes and download her book, because you're going to want to read that. We'll see you next week with Annalee.
Thanks for joining us for Relax I Got This with Texas Realtor Robin McCoy. Check out all the show notes for contact information on Robin and her guests, and to access your free buyer and seller guides. Also, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss a conversation. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time on Relax I Got This with Robin McCoy.